I used to think that design was about solving problems. But then I became much more interested in the problems themselves. Because when I'm looking at detailed social issues and looking at them in their complexity, I think it's a relevant role for designers to expose the problems and not necessarily provide ultimate solutions straight away. And this is a bit like political theatre, which shows what's wrong, but not necessarily how we fix it. And then I think designers can move to a second role, which is projecting into the future about several divergent discourses which we can go down. In escaping from solutionism, I think designers can look at these very complex problems in society, politics, and economics. But then there are a few things we need to be careful of. One, which is to be aware of the limitations of scale and system, and then also to look at how things are and how they might become in the future, but then not necessarily look at a finite idea, but also look at a timeline about how things might change. I think design is a radical sort of political profession. It's impossible to avoid that, but in looking at these really big problems in society, we become radical, politicized visionaries. So we're really projecting into the future. Now, this is all a bit hard to take, so I'll take you through my project, which I call the Museum of the Future Past. It's about energy. It's a collection of fictional objects from the future, which map the next 25 years of personal energy generation. It was a project for the energy company Aeon. So these 70 objects show specific moments in a possible future which is decentralized and messy, which has certain actors in it which have a certain interest in specialized types of self-generated energy. Now, I came up with these objects and the stories around them, these 70 objects, by looking at data from politics, economics, society, geology, migration patterns, weather patterns, and I created improbable narratives which I then gave to specific social groups which I made up, which I could see coming along. Fans, tribes, radicals, and idlers. I'll go through them quickly. So the fans are instigators of personal energy, those who have a specific interest in one type of energy. The second is when these fans come together, they form tribes, people connected by a shared interest. There are also radicals who are against the mass, who they protest against things that are currently happening. And then there are the idlers, who are the laggards in society, the last to adopt certain ways of living. And in creating these groups of people and the objects that go with them, I'm sort of fabricating a future, in some ways like an active archaeologist. And in showing how people will live through this object culture, I'm looking into the future and seeing how things could change, but more in a divergent manner. And I think in this way that design can act like theatre in holding a mirror up to society, to showing how things are and how things might be in the future. Now, these small objects exist on a small system, and on a small operational scale, and in sort of divergent systems. And I call this a heterotopic future, a collection of objects which map a divergent future. So that's because there's not one single way that things are going. There's many parallel developments which are occurring, especially in our world of decentralization and interconnectivity, that people are developing their own things in their own homes because everyone has access to the tools of a designer. And I think the challenge then is to see how all of these different small interventions will occur in a divergent past, in a divergent future, because things will not stay the way they are. And maybe this is a task for designers, to map this divergent future in the ways that things will go. Because I think it's interesting not to look at the next 4 years of the political cycle, where we look at the difficult things which are happening right now, or jumping forward to the 40 years in the future where there's no boundaries, but rather to look at the messy in-between, where the real intersects with the possible futures. Now, I'll give you this example from the Museum of the Future Past. It's a campaign flyer from 2021, which shows Geert Wilders promoting geothermal energy. Now, why would he do that? It's because the PVV's main voting body is in Limburg, which is also the best place in the Netherlands for geothermal energy. Now, if geothermal was best for his voters, then surely it could become part of his policy. But is this a future that we would like to see, or would you support this? I think it's these difficult futures which combine unlikely elements, in this case, conservative politics and renewable energy. And as well as looking at these specific moments, I think it's important for designers to look at the change in ways of thinking, because this is an example of a moment when this might be able to come about. This is the objects from the Museum of the Future Past, mapped from now until this radical future. And I think designers who take on this role of mapping the future in divergent ways, can look into the future and compare it to the current situation to map really complex ideas. I'm completing my thesis at the moment in design in economic crisis and banking reform, which is not an easy topic, I assure you. But I think if designers can take on these these big challenges and take on this kind of theatrical speculation in how things could become, then we can map possibilities for the future and create new political realities. Thanks.